this?
I actually have a question. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but does Augustine teach origin of the Holy Spirit from the Son, which would be which would be ex
So
filio?
does Augustine teach the Filioque?
No, I asked you about a tenet of the Filioque, which is ex filio. Does Augustine teach ex filio, which means from the Son, and does he teach and the Son, which would be Filioque?
I mean,
Because
it's kind of the
well,
same thing.
no, it's not because he teaches per filium, which is through the Son.
That's the same thing according to us.
Well, I know, but well, not according to not according to Florence, because Florence says origin, because it says
Okay.
the word principally, right? Because principally, when something is
Yeah, I
principally from
mean that's
something,
the thing. The difference between through and is going to be a very nuanced distinction. So like it's pretty much that. So like there's other like even Eastern Church fathers that speak about it in that way.
well, yeah, that's why I said the word principally, right? Because Augustine also says it's principally
What does
from the
Florence
Father.
say? I'm not as
Well, I think I'm pretty
yeah.
sure Florence says
What does
principally
Florence
from
say?
both the Father and the Son.
Yeah. So what does Florence say?
Like the direct quotation, it's a long counsel.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I want the canon.
I'll give you some quotations. So Florence tries to claim the council is also 18 years long. So
Mhm.
they claim Holy Spirit proceeds from both the Father and the Son, and that purgatory. This also has to do with purgatory. It's not just. I
Yeah,
understand. It
yeah.
also has to do with purgatory existing as a middle state.
As far as
The
I'm
Pope.
aware, the only like the major difference is that the Latin Church is trying to hold that you have like a dual hypostatic, you know, origin, right? And what the Eastern Orthodox is trying to maintain is that it's a singular hypostatic origin. That's the major difference.
Well,
So we will
my only
interpret.
issue is that my only issue is that Florence adds filioque when in the 400s they said that they weren't going to overwrite Nicaea. That's all. Didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And
When they
also,
said that it does,
Vatican II.
if anyone adds to this or adds or subtracts from it, yeah, I got it.
I, that's why I always wonder why it. What do they call it? Is it like militant Thomist or something?
Militant Thomas?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some
Hello? You
interesting
mean
characters out there
Astro?
recently.
You mean
Astro,
Astro?
Astro. Sure.
Yeah,
Oh
Astro.
yeah, Apophatic can talk about this because
What's up?
Apophatic is Eastern Orthodox.
SCOTUS, by the way, Eastern Orthodox
Oh, he's a
SCOTUS.
SCOTUS. Okay.
I'm also Eastern
SCOTUS,
Orthodox. Do you know?
are you a dual hypostatic origin for the Holy Spirit?
Me?
Yeah.
No, no.
Okay. Yes, he's a Greek Orthodox.
I'm also Greek Orthodox.
Has anyone ever attended the Byzantine Rite?
Oh, what for
Yes, I have
Catholics?
been to
I've been
the
there.
Byzantine LARP. I call it not the Byzantine Rite, the Byzantine LARP.
The
So I think
LARP?
it's Byzantine. I think it's more the Byzantine left.
Byzantine LARPers. They want to LARP like Greeks when they're not.
They're most likely Turkish people.
Yeah. Anyways, Jacob, I heard militant Thomist and fanatic Thomist and Astro mentioned. What were you speaking about before I joined here?
Oh, it's interesting
So
claims about Augustine from those people.
What
so
about
I'm back.
Augustine?
I'm back in my suite right now. So
Well, the
now I can
conflation
properly
of ex filio and per filium, right?
Ex patre per
my
filium.
dissertations can properly be explained to a group setting. So yeah, one at a time. Have your questions lined up, and what would you like me to explain to you?
Anyways, yeah, Jacob, I think you're talking about ex patre per filium, which
Yep.
means from the Father through the Son, right? Or eternal
And
line
from
of
the Father
creation,
and the Son. Right. Oh,
right?
so the issue is they're trying to find a way to explain it as meaning the same thing, despite the distinction with Augustine by saying it's principally from the Father, but never mentioning the Son in principle nor origin. The argument is whether or not it's an origin from the Son.
Let me get a very amazing quote from Saint Augustine.
Yeah.
This
I mean,
is one that just blows it out the park, right?
oh yeah, I believe that he did teach because of his wording. He did teach a somewhat orthodox filioque, but he definitely did not teach the origin from the Son.
Florentine Filioque.
Yeah, Florentine Filioque. It was not a Florentine Filioque. They take the word Filioque and they run like 900,000 miles per hour with it.
Let's read this quote from St. Augustine.
Can you post it in the side chat, by the way? And then can you
Yeah, I
show me the
will.
Latin? I can read Latin. So just show me Latin.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I tried giving the Catholic. I used to be in the Catholic Church for a while, and I read the entire catechism. The catechism is what made me leave
Yeah.
it.
So you got duped. That's too
I
bad.
got duped. I got duped, and I read the catechism. And I was like, huh, this is interesting. This is not what Augustine says.
What about the catechism did you disagree with?
Getting into Vatican I. As soon as I got into Vatican I and the catechism, I was it just left.
My guy.
I left. I left
So
after
my
Vatican I
guy.
because I already knew Frankish history myself before joining the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
I've done military history for the last 11 years. There is nothing that was true about what they were saying about it because I know about Alcuin's letters already before joining the Catholic Church.
You know Anastasius the librarian?
Yes.
Yeah, you know how he claimed that when they spoke of the Filioque, all they meant was temporal mission and not hypostatic procession.
And why would the current church hold against that? I mean, are you saying it changed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good.
Okay, so we can read this quote by St. Augustine. He makes a very good argument. Very, very good statement here.
Just copy paste it and give me Latin. I want the Latin.
I will copy paste it, yes.
Drop a fact. Do you know Black and Vane and Toledo's? Everybody.
What do you think about the Council of Toledo?
Wait, are you Boolean? I swear.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Council of Toledo. Oh, I mean the local council in the 500s that was caused by the Visigoths' confusion. I already
Yeah,
knew about
so,
Council of Toledo. Yeah, I've known about that one since I was like 11, dude.
so the Council
The
of Toledo,
end of the
it
battle.
professes the Filioque.
Not even the Florenzi one either. That's the
Yes, it
funny part.
does. So at the Creed at Toledo, which they recited, it included the Filioque.
In full explanation, the same as the Council of Florence.
Okay, let me ask you the question. Why did the Orthodox object to the terminology of proceeding from the Father and the Son specifically in the Creed? It's because the Creed always was for hypostatic procession, right? So the Council of Toledo, when they recited the Creed, they included the Filioque. So
I mean,
they were professing a Filioquist creed. The Florentine way, because the creed is only hypostatic.
well, yeah. I mean, that's what Nicaea is about.
Okay, so the Council of Toledo, which was against Arianism in the West, clearly professed the Filioque within the creed. So maybe you could say that this is already an established doctrine before any of the Frankish papal states.
All right.
Yeah,
So
well,
what do you
then
think
we
of the
can just
idea
say
of
that it's a Visigothic development and a compromise, but we don't accept compromises because we don't think that any of our moles were objectionable in the
How
very
was
first
it a
place.
development if it was taught in the 4th and 3rd century at the Council of Toledo?
Council of Toledo was in 589.
589
That's
for
the
me.
fifth council.
so Jacob, what do you think of the Knights
No,
Templar?
Filioque. So when it was mentioned was 589, the third council. It wasn't mentioned in the first nor the second.
Okay, but you understand in the Council of Toledo, the creed that they professed included the Filioque in it, right? So my question to you is that how is it a development if it was a well-established doctrine by this
Well, it
time?
wasn't because it was modified because we have an earlier creed from the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed,
So are you saying it was an
381.
interpolation?
I mean, well, of course, they added Filioque to it.
Okay,
Are
how do you
you
know that?
instigating something, Billion? Billion, why are you speaking like this?
I'm just simply questioning you and
He's
your
just
belief.
investigating.
Yeah,
Investigating.
I'm seeing what your answers are to these types of questions because these are good objections.
I mean, yeah, 381 gives pretty detailed language about the Holy Spirit. It would be interesting to add the Son after the 381
True.
distinction.
True, but are you claiming that at the Council of Toledo it was an interpolation? Basically, the Latins had gone and basically took, the document and included the Filioquist creed within it.
I mean, we wouldn't really call it interpolation. It's just an explicit addition, right? Through an official
That's
church
what an
council that's
interpolation.
local.
That's what an interpolation.
Oh. Well, interpolations are just texts that are inserted into an original document to make it appear as if it was always part of the original. I'm not sure what the intent of Toledo was.
Okay, so you
I don't
believe that
know
they
them.
added to the document,
Yeah, I do believe
right?
that. I don't know what the intent of it was. We don't know much about the
What
intent.
is the evidence for adding to the document? Like, what is the evidence that that actually happened? Because typically, when we see that someone adds something to a document, we can tell by comparing the Greek and Latin manuscripts. For example, if you read um, some of St. Basil, right, some of what is in the Latin is not in the Greek. And that's how we can tell that some um, of St. Basil's writings were likely forged and added over time.
Really?
How do you know that the Council of, well, not any of the writings we have now, but the writings from the Latins, like they forged tons of documents of St. Basil.
Well, we know that
What
because
they,
they say "hectupatros" and then they say "preceded," right? They try to take the one Latin equivalent word, and also the Latin equivalent for the word for "precede" pulls from two different words for Greek. Because you have the word for Greek and preceding in Revelation 22:1, then you have John 15:26. Then they take the Latin equivalent and then they try to make it mean whatever they want and establish their own context, even though it doesn't mean that in the
I mean,
Greek fathers.
the thing is there's only so much it can mean. So you
Yeah.
don't have to like straw man as, oh, mean whatever they want.
That's what I'm trying to say. That the word means what it means, but they take it and they choose the one that they want
so
or like
okay,
precede it.
the term procedere, right, can refer to temporal mission, eternal procession, and it can refer to eternal manifestation,
Yeah.
right? So the Roman Catholics, when they read the Church Fathers in Latin and they say procedere, they interpret it as hypostatic procession. But I mean, I can look in Latin fathers and I can tell clearly that in some places they're meaning temporal. Like the Holy Spirit is the gift of the Father and the Son. That's obviously economic, right?
It is
But here's the issue though. In the Council of Toledo, they,
the fourth council, right? The
yeah,
633? Yeah.
no, no,
No?
here. Let me show
Are you
you.
doing third or fourth show?
1 second.
Because if you're familiar, there was the fourth council after the original council people were dead in 633, where they said et in spiritum sanctum, dominum et vivacantem, ex patri et filio presidentem.
Yeah, the Third Council of Toledo.
Oh, third, okay. Because if you know about the fourth, is when that's when they added ex patri et filio. That's where
So
Florence gets its language.
So at the Third Council of Toledo in 589, the Filioque was used in the creed that they recited,
Uh-huh.
specifically at that council. And this council was to anathematize Arianism. So basically, King Ricard
Yeah, how's it go?
had Ricard or something like that. He had to read a profession of faith at the council because he used to be an Arian, and then he accepted the Catholic faith and anathematized Arius. So this was in response to Arianism, and they recited the Filioque in the Creed. So how can you say that the Filioque is some addition by the Frankish states if it was already in the Council of Toledo, the third one in 589?
Well, because I can say that the Frankish implicitly added it to the Bishop of Rome, because
What
the
is the
context is, huh?
what is the evidence of that they added this to the text?
Alcuin's letters. Alcuin's letters and Pope Leo III's rejection of it in a letter as well in 800.
Can I please see this?
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to see this bit of information. That'd be very important.
You know Ratio de Symbolo Fide?
No, but I would love for you to send the sources where popes are openly rejecting it as a forgery.
Uh-huh.
I think that would be beneficial to this discussion because from what I'm aware of and what I've read in Ebershinsky's book, this is a totally fine council.
So you have, there's one source. There's a section in it after. This is the name of the book. The section is named this.
Can you please send the quote?
I will send the quote. I'm sending these sources first.
Okay, that's fine.
And if you're also familiar with the Royal Frankish Annals, the Annales Regni Francorum, the diplomatic mission to Rome. There's also letters between Charlemagne and Leo III. That's an epistole. And then you also have this source as well. What is this from?
A quote from St. Augustine.
Augustine,
But
yeah.
yeah, so I know
Brackets the way that they interpret it, or because the brackets not original text, right?
no, it is the original text.
Why is it in brackets?
I do not know. But this is the original text.
Okay, hold on. Give me the original text because I think the brackets is just them trying to give context because it's on a website. Might be. Is it the Church Fathers English website or something? Because they tend to
No,
use a lot of brackets.
this is a quote that an Orthodox sent me, but I remember where this is from. This is his work on symbol of faith.
I'll just read about the brackets. They hold by this position, namely to predicate the Holy Spirit neither is begotten like the Son of the Father, for Christ is the only one, so begotten, not as begotten. Oh yeah, I know this one. Yeah. What about it?
Right. No. It was just a quote from St. Augustine that you told me to send earlier that I thought disproved the Filioque. Anyways, I
Right.
remember this quote. So I remember the history behind this. The Bishop of Jerusalem, right, basically started noticing that the Latins were coming over and chanting and reciting the Filioque within the creed, right?
Mhm.
And the Bishop of Jerusalem was like, dude, what the hell's going on here? Right? And he ended up contacting, I think, Pope Leo III, right? Um, and basically, he said, dude, um, we recognize that it was prohibited,
Yeah.
right? That this, you weren't allowed to recite it in the creed. You wouldn't recite the Filioque in the creed. Um, but here's the issue. How does him saying this prove that the Council of Toledo, the third and the second, were an interpolation?
What do you mean? Like it's just not in the original creed. Anything that's added to a specific set of words that wasn't there in the very first place is the definition of an interpolation.
Yes, I understand that. You're saying that there was an addition made to the Council of Toledo, right? And you're
No,
just
I'm saying that Toledo is an addition to the Council of Nicaea, and then Florence butchers and takes Toledo, and then adds to Toledo in terms of the explanation, like the
no.
origin.
Okay, so at the
Does
Council
Toledo
of
address an origin or no?
at the Council of Toledo, they
It addresses
recited.
origin.
Stop interrupting. They recited the creed with the Filioque at the Third and Second Council of Toledo. You are not allowed to recite the Filioque in the creed because the creed is specifically concerning hypostatic procession. Okay? So whenever someone says um, if someone says that the Holy Spirit proceeds from the Father and the Son, procedere, specifically in the Creed, that is of a hypostatic causation or origination, right? And this is actually what many Orthodox saints and church fathers will claim, right? Why it can be added to the Creed, right? Temporal processions and origins cannot be added to the Creed. So at the Second Council of Constantinople, and forgive me, not Constantinople, Second Council of Toledo and the Third Council of Toledo, they recited the Filioque within their creed, right? So your argument here is that Pope Leo III claimed that they prohibited it from being read in the creed, right? But what's the
When did you hear me saying
what's
that?
the proof for that?
When did you hear me saying that? Can you actually cite me saying that?
Okay, so the quote that you just sent, right?
Huh?
You sent the quote because I had asked you a question of is is the Council of Toledo an interpolation? And you said it's an addition, meaning that the Latins or the Franks had added to the document of the Council of Toledo after the fact.
So no. So if you're gonna straw me, just stop straw manning me. I'm gonna explain myself. If I'm interrupted, I'll just leave. I'm saying that they took the Council of Toledo and ran with it by adding more to it than what it stated. That's all I said. I didn't say they literally changed the words of Council of Toledo, but that they further explained it as meaning that this must mean that the Holy Spirit has origin from the Son. That's what I'm talking about when they made the double procession spiration ideology. That's it. But you didn't let me finish.
Okay,
Did you even
so
understand what I was saying, or
so
no?
so
Or
what
you
you're
just
saying, let me
you
one
you
second. Let
like
me
the
steel
LARP
man you.
arguments?
Let
You
me
like the
steel.
LARP arguments or something?
I'm just trying to get your input as an EO, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't know
So
if you're like a LARPing because
okay, so let me try and make this very clear. Okay, you're saying that in the Council of Toledo, it may have said the words proceeds from the Father and the Son, but at the Council of Florence, they took those words and extended it to this double spiration doctrine, right?
yes, that's all.
Okay,
That's all my
okay.
claim is. It
Yeah,
wasn't about
that
me.
is a very flawed argument, and I'll tell you why. It's a flawed argument because, as I said earlier, the creed doesn't deal with temporal procession or even eternal manifestation. It specifically deals with hypostatic or origination. And that is why when uh, Saint Tarasius of Constantinople, the patriarch, when he said the expatere per filium doctrine, right, from the Father through the Son, he said that this should not be recited in the creed. Because the creed, when you say through the Son in the creed, it exhibits the idea that the Son is a joint cause, right? Joint mediator in the okay. So do you understand how that answer that you gave to the Council of Toledo, reciting the Filioque in the Creed, is not a good response?
What?
Yeah, saying that the Council of Florence misinterpreted and made an addition to the Council of Toledo, and what they meant is a flawed argument because it is already implied what they meant by reciting the Filioque in the Creed, right? Because it's hypostatic procession in the Creed. So it's already implied that the hypostatic origination and procession is also from the Son as well, because they are reciting it in the Creed specifically. Like you would never see an Orthodox say from the Father through the Son in the Creed. You never see them say this.
Well, if you want, you should send me stuff like this.
Okay, I will
But
send you a
also, but
correction.
also, I don't think you understand like fully what I mean by it. Like what my
I
purpose is. I'm not
I
doing a premise argument. I'm saying that it doesn't make sense that they ran with it without the approval of the Eastern churches.
okay.
That's all.
Okay,
My
without
argument, I'm not making like a generic argument on this. It's
okay,
more
I'm
than
not
just
saying you're making a generic argument. My point was is that if the Second and Third Council of Toledo clearly recite the Filioque and the Creed, it wasn't just a doctrine that wasn't well known. I mean, it wasn't just a doctrine that the Franks came up with to, how do I say, get political leverage. It actually had a theological basis within the church by this time.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah, but what I'm trying to, but that's not really my argument.
Okay. I know your argument is that the church fathers don't teach the Florentine Filioque, but how do you know that's true if councils are reciting the Filioque long before the Council of Florence?
Ecumenical councils, though.
Doesn't matter if it's ecumenical or not. These are still official councils in response to Arianism, right? That are reciting the Filioque within the creed explicitly, right? I guess you would have an argument if you were to say, well, Pope Leo III claimed that it was prohibited to recite the Filioque in the creed, right? Because Pope Leo III did say that. Therefore, it is more reasonable to believe that the Council of Toledo is an interpolation, meaning that the Latins later added it to the Latin document. They ended up adding to the document of Toledo, right?
Mhm.
Because Pope Leo III, if it was already established at Toledo, Pope Leo III would have no issue with people reciting in the creed, right?
Yep.
So that's a plausible
Well,
argument, and that's what I
that's the
thought.
argument I normally use. That's the argument I normally use.
Oh, really? So as soon as I make the argument for you, you start saying that's the argument you
No,
normally
it's the
use.
argument I use. Go ask Blackout, dude. It's the argument I mostly use.
Okay,
You want to go ask Blackout?
Blackout is a terrible human being. Why would I want to ask him?
What did you do on the? Wait, what did you do on this? Or what happened?
He banned me because of basically my disagreement on him with corrective baptism.
Wait, what is he? What did he say?
That we should rebaptize Roman Catholics and not just chrismate them.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's Luciferianism.
I mean, yeah, I do actually make this argument though. If you ask them, I'm just confused. Like, what matters? Like currently with this stuff.
Like, dude, I can steelman both positions, and I think that you can actually interpret the church fathers either with eternal manifestation or with the Florentine Filioque. It all
Yep.
depends on what you think they mean with their terminology. But the document from Pope Leo III is really, yeah, I think that's a way more heavy hitter, right? Where he said that they prohibited the use of it. And then he made the two big tablets, right, with the Greek and the Latin, and it says only from the Father with no procession of the Holy Spirit. Now that is important, right? But the typical Catholic response would just be, oh, yeah, he didn't recognize it in the creed, but he still recognized it as a doctrine. Well, I mean, he doesn't say that explicitly, but that's just what they assume. Right? There's no justification for that.
It's the same case that Sergius Bulgakov makes as well.
I mean,
He doesn't disagree with the theology. He literally brings up Leo III. He just doesn't believe it should be normative protocol. But he also doesn't he also doesn't disagree if that's what Rome wants to normalize.
well,
His
I mean,
opinion
he
is that it shouldn't be
literally you can
universalized.
go to the
But
Vatican today. It's still there. It's like the two tablets that have the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed in Greek and in Latin. They made that because people in Rome were reciting the Filioque and the Creed, and the East was pissed.
I mean, as far as I'm aware now, like your modern theologians actually they've already conceded. They don't really care about the issue no more.
Like here's the real point of contention. Do you think the papacy was taught, Jacob?
Yeah, that's the big
No,
contention.
not at
Yeah.
all.
Everybody knows this.
So you remember in the Council of Chalcedon, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember that one canon in the Canon of Chalcedon that basically said that Constantinople should have the exact same
Yeah,
authority and
I
jurisdiction
bring
as
this up.
Rome? Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. If the papacy was not recognized in the first millennium, why did Pope St. Gregory object to the canon?
Which Gregory?
Forgive me, Pope St. Leo.
Okay.
Pope St. Leo, when he had been shown this canon by his papal legates, he claimed that this was a prideful action of Constantinople and absolutely denied the canon. So, if in the first millennium the papacy wasn't recognized, why would Pope St. Leo outright deny a canon and reprimand the Constantinopolitan bishop for, or the Bishop of Constantinople for, making a canon which says that Rome should basically, New Rome should have the exact same authority and jurisdiction as Old Rome, right? If the papacy wasn't recognized, why did he outright condemn the Bishop of Constantinople and then annul that canon from the canon of Chalcedon, Council of Chalcedon? Why is that?
Good question for them.
Okay. In the Council of Trullo, right? The Synod of Trullo, they tried to reaffirm the exact same canon, right? They said we totally agree, we completely profess boldly and proudly, um, and then they listed the canon of Chalcedon, which gave New Rome the same authority as Old Rome, like the exact same. But then guess what? Pope Sergius didn't sign off on Trullo because of that reason. He also didn't sign off on Trullo because of the part concerning unleavened bread not being able to be partaken in the Eucharist. So Pope Sergius and Pope St. Leo both rejected canons which gave Constantinople, which were to intend to give Constantinople the exact same authority as Rome. If the papacy wasn't recognized in the first millennium, why would they just annul these canons, which would seem to contradict the papacy? Why wouldn't they have an issue with that? Yeah, man, Rome was destroyed by the barbarians. Western Rome was destroyed. We had to go away to the Frankish states. Now Constantinople, you can assume the primate. Now, that's completely fine, right? Because primacy is not over the apostolic faith and the apostolic tradition. Primacy and supremacy is given to those with imperial power, right? This is the actual Orthodox position. Why wouldn't they just be fine with that? Constantinople had more than enough imperial power to be considered a
And the
primate
Byzantines had the
see.
strongest army at the time.
Exactly.
They were attacked on 9 sides, and they still held the empire. And in
So
fact, they
if,
reconquered Rome. So who's the prime?
as I said, the okay, this argument that I'm making is that if primacy is based upon imperial jurisdiction, right, and
Mhm.
having the imperial status as the Orthodox proclaim, why the fuck did Pope St. Leo and Pope Sergius de- deny a canon which would give Constantinople the exact same authority as Old Rome? You want to know why? Because the papacy was in the first millennium. They're not supposed to have the exact same authority as Peter if you don't flow from Peter, if you're not from the apostolic succession of Peter. I think that they actually made that very clear.
Yo, it's good.
Yep.
You heard about Luce?
Like I don't think Orthodox Christians understand how the quote from the Council of Chalcedon just goes against their own position. Because the popes denied it outright. I mean, if you read through Pope St. Leo's letters, by the way, his letters were dogmatized by the Council of Chalcedon. He states that if you're not in communion with the Bishop of Rome, then you're literally you're estranged from Christ in the holy mysteries.
Damn. Did you hear about Luce?
Luce, did you hear about Luce? Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did.
What the hell is that?
It is a mascot that the Vatican created. An anime
What the
mascot.
isn't the mascot? I mean, like, it'd be weird to call Christ a mascot, but like,
It's an idol.
It's an idol.
I mean,
Like,
I like
what the hell is
Luce
that thing?
personally, but the company that created Luce is like gay as shit. Like they do pride stuff. See, Abysmal, did I do just such a good job at arguing for Roman Catholicism? I could just
No,
steal
that
my
was a
inner
pretty good
position
job.
all day.
I mean, you guys have like read all the documents. I've only gotten the cursory kind of overview from like history of the church.
Like my formal education is specifically in this, so I mean it's like I have the arguments from both sides. I understand, and I like to steelman them. But I think that is probably one of the most convincing arguments on the side of the papacy. Um, Other than the Pope exercising his authority throughout history, I think that that's like when they say, "Oh, Saint Cyril appealed to Pope Celestine, who immediately excommunicated Nestorius." I think that's a crappy argument. Um, but I mean, there are good arguments as well against the papacy. Like for example, the Council of Constantinople, which is ecumenical. The Saint Meletius of Antioch, the person that oversaw it, died at a communion with Rome and closed a council at a communion with Rome. And Rome didn't even recognize it till the 6th century, but it was still considered ecumenical by everybody else.
Yeah.
So like you don't need the Bishop of Rome to have an ecumenical council. Like there's so many good arguments on both sides. It's very hard to decide which one's right.
This is their mascot for only 2025, right?
Yes.
So weird.
I saw a picture of Luce burning Martin Luther. It's the funniest shit ever.
No way, really?
Like had Martin Luther on like a pitchfork, I think. Something.
That's funny.
By the way, Jacob, I hope you understand that I have no like hate towards you. I'm
Oh,
just
I
being a
know. I
debate
know.
bro.
You probably just like to steal
I'm just an autistic spurg. My bad.
If we actually do a debate, I would prepare for it instead and address all counterpoints. I'm not like a walking, talking refuter. I mostly just focus on
I see.
learning
Walking and
prayers.
talking
Right now, I'm
refuter.
focusing on learning prayers. I will talk to Muslims a lot. That's my profession, converting Muslims.
I think it's actually quite important which apostolic faith we're going to be a part of, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, I used
I
to be
think
a
it's a
Catholic.
very important question. I know you told me earlier you used to be a Catholic. Were you Uniate? What were you?
The Latin, it's a Latin right? Thomas Catholic.
I see. Do you
Yo,
disagree with Thomism?
can you go through your Duns
Uh,
Scotus?
what about it? What about
Oh, sorry. What'd you say, Abysmal?
Yeah, Boethius, go through your Scotism on the Trinity.
I've read Scotus on the Trinity.
No, I know. Ask him about it.
Oh, you want me to ask him a question?
Yeah.
Okay, I can give you the Thomist argument. Um, what makes the Son and the Spirit majorly really distinct, Jacob?
Well, distinct in like identity, or
What makes the Son and the Spirit relatively opposed, which allows them to be majorly really distinct or relationally distinct from each other? How are
incredible.
the Son and the Spirit distinct?
Well, the Son is begotten, Spirit proceeds.
Okay. Um, so are you saying that their modes of origin can distinguish them from each other? How can a mode of origin constitute a major real distinction between two persons? How is that relational at all?
I guess I have to do more work to word it properly.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, if you're, I mean, I'm not just gonna do
I'm a
rapid fire.
Scotist, so I believe the same thing. Like I don't believe the Filioque is necessary to distinguish between the Son and the Spirit. I have my own arguments for it. I'm just interested in what you believe in. But whatchamacalled, okay. What's another interesting question? Um, what?
I guess because when we say that the Son is begotten, because we're talking about eternal generation, because it's what reflects the Father's nature directly, like light from light.
Mm-hmm. How are generation and procession distinct?
Hmm?
How is generation and procession distinct?
Well, because the thought emerges from the mind, and they're distinct, yet still inseparable.
Okay, they're distinct because they're distinct. Is that
What
what
do
you
you
just
what do you
told me?
define as distinct, man?
Distinct,
So,
being non-identical.
so
Your mom's gay. Your dad's a lesbian.
continue. Continue.
Well, begetting is a one-to-one transmission of nature, right? This is why the Son alone is called image or icon, EIKON in the
Yeah,
Greek.
so you're just gonna say one is by intellection, the other is by volition, right? Okay. Um, what makes intellection and volition distinct? How do we know that they're not just two terms that apply to the same thing?
I guess the analogy is bad, but something like how the Son's generation is the divine intellection, the Spirit's the divine volition of the will.
Yeah. So intellection
Okay.
and will, how do you know they're distinct and they just don't apply to the exact same thing? Like how are they just not two terms that apply to the same thing? How are they distinct?
I think.
It's interesting. He's appealing to divine simplicity for it. That's not the route that I would take, but
Actually, Orthodox are believe that there's still mystery in the Trinity.
So you're saying that the reason that begetting and procession is distinct because it's a mystery?
No, I'm talking about I'm responding to him.
no,
He
I
said
mean
something.
right, but you're getting pigeonholed into the freaking actus purus distinction.
Uh-huh.
How am I pigeonholing him into
No,
the
no, no.
act
I'm not
spirit?
saying that you are, right? But that's
Okay.
the route he chose, right? I wasn't gonna step in,
What's
but just
wait?
being
What's wrong
curious.
with actus purus?
No, there's nothing wrong with that, but because it doesn't answer. So just by saying that there's like a, imminent versus effective action within like the quote on, pure act of God, it doesn't answer the question of how they're distinct conceptually, right? And then it's just an appeal to mystery.
It doesn't just demonstrate how they're majorly really distinct either, because you cannot get a major real distinction between something that like between something's mode of origin, right? So like
Right, the mode of procession is different, right? The other route is to try to maintain, right, that the mode of procession is different, and that's what's relationally distinct. But the
right in
relations,
the
but the relations can't
mhm.
be understood anything other than a property. So you're gonna have to maintain that. It's not gonna be, is not gonna satisfy like the.
Right, and I think that I have an argument against this. Basically, the argument that I've been running is like Lagrange's argument against like the Scotist position that the Filioque isn't necessary to distinguish between them. I would just like argue that the Son and the Spirit have a relation via eternal manifestation, um, that in such a relation, those two terms are actually opposed to each other. So, like for example, in eternal manifestation, the Son actually receives the Spirit. So the recipient in that which is received are relatively opposed, but it's not a relative opposition of origin or of source
But
in that.
just of otherness.
Right. Like, okay, a recipient of something can't be that which is received, right? Not logically. It would be a contradiction if they were the same thing in the same
Right.
time in the same sense. Okay, right. So
It's
the
it's it's.
Son,
Go ahead.
mhm.
Complete
So the
your thought.
Son and the Spirit are actually distinct, not because of the Filioque, but because of their personal relation that is not origin, right? That is eternal manifestation. And I think that's a very sound argument.
I like the part where you got to the otherness. So you're at least willing to, distinguish between that. Like for me, there's nothing inconsistent from the Thomist position because you could analogically try to describe or try to not describe, but you could try to refer to the otherness, right? Analogically, in a way where it would be something like just as the Father can reflect upon himself through the Son can reflect upon the Father through the Spirit, and the Spirit can reflect upon the Father through the Son. So that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't violate any principle of identity of the Father, and therefore, like it sufficiently, in an analogical way, is sufficient to explain the unity of the Godhead through
I see.
otherness, right? It's a reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just basic Plotinus. But Thomas doesn't articulate it that way. Um, he
He
just tries to
articulates it
maintain that
very differently. He's more Aristotelian.
yeah, he tries to maintain that it's just, that the procession is different, right? And then he just assumes that, well, he doesn't further detail like what is meant by procession. That's what caused all these problems.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have to
Agreed.
just go back to Plotinus, in my opinion. But
Yeah, Plotinus teaches the Filioque in his book on the triads. He didn't teach the Filioque per se, but he taught that what was it? That the second person supposedly in this triad was a cause of the third in this triad.
yeah,
So that's another argument that Catholics can use. They can use that Plotinus literally taught a sort of Filioque in his triad, where that's where the church fathers got their idea of the triad from, or it's where they
that's the
took
way
from.
I was
Thirds.
taught, is doing the whole Plotinus Neoplatonism. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when anybody talks about or has question about Trinity, I always just go to Plotinus.
Right. Right. I
You're not
agree.
going to see the church teach it as this kind of like that you can explain the reflection of otherness. You're not going to find it articulated that way, but
Mm-hmm.
that's one way that you could try to articulate unity of Godhead without violating the principal identity of the Father.
Mm-hmm. I see. Yeah. Okay. I understand that. Yeah. But I think there's many interesting arguments on both sides of the debate and discussion. Um,